In 1981, Campeau Corporation and the corporations of the city of Kanata entered into an agreement that would permit the development of approximately 1,400 acres of green space and farmland for residential subdivisions. In order to secure Kanata's support for its proposal, Campeau offered to designate 40% of this land as open and recreational space. Part of the 40% consists of the Kanata Lakes Golf and Country Club, owned by ClubLink Corporation. ClubLink wants to develop the golf course and is challenging in the courts the 40% agreement. If successful, this would alter the green space over a much larger area than only the golf course. These photos show only some of the green space and wildlife currently protected by this agreement. The 1,400-acre parcel of land, which was included in the 40% agreement between Campeau and Kanata, has been designated in current court documents as the Campeau Lands. In my exchange with neighbors and friends, I have noticed that most are not aware what constitute these Campeau Lands, believing that the 40% agreement applies solely to the golf course. And therefore, there is little understanding of what lands fall under the 40% agreement. I would not be surprised if that were the case in Kanata as a whole, and definitely in Ottawa in general. This short presentation attempts to rectify this situation. So what constitutes the Campeau Lands? These are the Campeau Lands, originally 1,400 acres of undeveloped green space and farmland irregularly bounded. It's likely a little difficult for most to identify where this is. Well, this is Beaverbrook. Developed in the mid-1960s, there are a couple of other reference points. For example, here is the interchange of the 417 at March and Eagleson, actually still under construction in 1976, which was the western end of the 417 at the time. And here is the beginning of the Hazeldean neighborhood development. Other than that, it's likely difficult to understand the exact nature of the Campeau Lands, so let's skip 21 years ahead to 2017. In this picture, it might be a little bit easier for people to see what has been developed, but I'll try to help out a bit. Here is the original 417 interchange at Campeau, which now proceeds, the 417 now proceeds to the west past the Centrum. Here is March Road. Up here is Carling Avenue, and they meet in the middle of the Kanata North Business Park. Over on the west side is the Terry Fox Road. And you'll notice that Terry Fox is completely outside the Campeau Lands, except for a little bit at the northern end. And here's Kanata Avenue in the middle of the photo, some of which is within the Campeau Lands and some of which is not. So what does we look like for the future? Well, in 2010, a pretty definitive plan was laid out for the entire area. It included a portion which was at the time still undeveloped, which is in the pink area, and the portion which was currently developed, and the green space within that area. To help you identify this better, let's take a look at the green spaces. These are parks that currently belong to the city that were handed over by the developers and are now deeded to the city in the built-up areas of Kanata Lakes. These are the larger parks. There are parkettes, paths, and so on, which I have not identified. Over here is the Beaver Pond Lake and Marshland. The lake is at the northern end, or at the top end of this image, and the marshlands consist most of the rest of the area. The Beaver Pond flows out of this area to the top of this image into the Kazelle Creek, which you may have heard of. The largest component at this point in here is the golf course. It consists of 176 acres, which make up nearly 13% of the entire Campeau Lands. That's 13%, a portion of the 40% of the Campeau Lands. The golf course belongs to ClubLink Corporation. Now, if we take a look inside the pink area, we have to keep in mind that most of that area still belongs to developers. It is not currently part of the lands that belong to the city. The major portion, obviously, is the other shore of the Beaver Pond and marshlands. Together, these Beaver Pond and marshlands make up nearly 20% of the total 1,400 acres. The next largest area is the Trillium Woods. Trillium Woods are 106 acres, or nearly 8% of the 1,400 acres. They still belong to private hands. So these are the green spaces. There are other parkettes and parks that may be designated within the pink area, but they have yet to be identified. And if the 40% agreement were to fail to be supported by the courts, then not only would the golf course be in jeopardy, but the other green areas, the Trillium Woods and the Beaver Pond marshlands and pond, would also be in jeopardy. So at this point, I'd like to turn attention to the golf course, because that is currently where the debate is taking place. The golf course belongs to ClubLink. It is in this area here, and here's a closer representation where in the 2019 planning rationale submitted to the city, this was the development that was proposed for that land. Essentially, all of the golf course would disappear, with the exception of some parcels which would remain green. When seen on the entire map for the area, this is the outcome. Very little green space left in the currently built up areas of Kanata Lakes. And as I mentioned before, if this were to be approved by the courts, then the currently identified green areas of Trillium Woods and the other shore of the Beaver Pond and Beaver Marshlands would also be in jeopardy, because the builders could now see that these lands are no longer protected and could apply to have them developed, given that they actually own the properties. They have not been deeded to the city. That completes the presentation. One last slide to thank those who provided information to help me put this together. Thank you very much.